Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So this is kind of fun. We are 3 years from the time we started. It could have taken 6 years easily, but I hope that you've been reading along with us as we go through each chapter. So let me, for the sake of our YouTube, this is June of 2016. We are looking at chapter 31 of A Course in Miracles. We've been through, it's taken us, I think, 35 sessions to get through this. We had an introduction, and then we had a couple of chapters that we took 2 months, because they were that long, a couple of really long chapters in the book. A few announcements before we get started today. Although we're completing the series on the book, we're going to continue. And I'm going to go topically rather than going through, say, the manual or something like that. In July, a very good friend of mine, Dr. Rod Shelberg, is going to be here. He is a very serious Course in Miracles student, but he's also a very humble, beautiful guy who, you probably know, I've told you, he's in charge of 3 nursing homes and a hospice center up in Maine, which means that he spends a lot of time writing death certificates, but he also spends a lot of loving time with his patients. And he sent me an email just a couple days ago, and he was talking about how lucky he feels and what a wonderful job he's got. And he just feels so incredibly blessed to be able to be in this position that he's in, where he can do this kind of work with these folks. And I know that he makes their transitions incredibly peaceful and blissful. He has a way of taking fear away from them and getting them to relax. So there's, it's just nothing to be worrying about here. It's going to be better for you, right? So Rod and I will share that day. Then in August, we take a little vacation time. And then beginning in September, I'm going to start having some more guest speakers with me. I'll do some by myself, but I'm also have some guest speakers to share the time with. And it just so happens that September is 9/11 that we're meeting, and it's the 15th anniversary of the Twin Towers going down. So Amy Torres, who many of you know as a Course in Miracles leader here in New York City, moved to Florida and now to California, but she's going to be in New York at that time, and we're going to share that day. And the topic is going to be healing the terrorist within. The word error is inside the word terrorist, and obviously that's work that really needs to be done, right? And then, not 100%, I think in October I'm going to have David Fishman join me. David's been working with the Course for almost as long as I have, from the late 70s onward. We've been very actively working with the Course. And I'll just tell you more as time goes by. For those of you, there's some free copies of Miracles Magazine over there. Also want to let you know that we're part of a seminary here. It's called All Faith Seminary. They meet on Saturdays before this class. We've got a few people in the room who are going to be ordained on Saturday of next week. There's Nancy Omaha Boyle. Is there any other students here that's going to be on? Well, Nancy's here, and a few others. If you'd like to think about joining us in this program, talk to me or Shanti after class. And I think that's the most of the announcements. I do want to do something that may seem a little, it may seem a little ego, but I want to do it anyhow, just sort of for fun. We try to keep track of who's been here along the way. And I know it's not maybe 100% accurate, but it's almost 100% accurate. I'm going to read you in descending order of who's been here the most times, okay? And I want to, I'm serious. I'd actually ask for those people to stand when I call their name and stay standing, right? But the number one is out in the hall. And we all knew that's Shanti, right? All right, so Shanti. And then, do you mind doing this? I know all right. Lily Katz has never missed a class. Yeah. May I suggest that you not applaud with each person, because I'm going to just keep doing. I might ask everybody to stay standing after I call their name. Billy, Ryan. Oh, all right. Actually, the next two are Tiffany and Anna, but they're in Tibet today. Oh, I know. What's sort of interesting. Next, believe it or not, is Alex. Well, wait, come on, both of you stand up. Stay standing. Alex and Billy. Okay, Brad. All of them. All right. David Zimmerman. George Tani. But do you mind, George, if I say, George is going into the hospital tomorrow, have a heart surgery. So our prayers are with you, George, and 100%, we know it's going to be really, really, it's going to really work out well for you. Okay. Christian DeBuziak, who's not here today. That's okay. Ellen McNamara. Right? Eileen. What did they say? Ellen. Because I know it's Eileen. Veronica Vidler. Okay, see, it's the front row people, right? Amy Spalding. Brooke and Michael Monjo. Okay. Dolores Kessler, who is, I just understand, having tennis lessons today. Nancy Silva, I don't think is here. Cora Yummel. All right. The next is, I'm getting, these people aren't here. Is Debbie Nodell here? Okay. Mikako. Mikako, is that? Yeah. Makiko. All right. I don't think Paula's here. I'm going to stick with this. Susan Newford. Here she is. So Susan. Chris Ogard. Chris Ogard's not here. Paul McLean. Okay. Nora Yipes. How do you say your last name, Nora? Yipes? Yipet. Yipet. Okay. Nora. The Roos, but they're sorry. Martin Swiss and Nancy Hamill. Next. James Daughtery. Okay. Heather Harris is not here. Tavia. Yeah. You. Denise Dolan. Just Larry Glenns. Marvin Ginsburg. I don't think Marvin's here today. Jean Futango. Jean's here? No? Al Gorgio. Susan Greenfield. Roya. Okay. Nancy Omaha Boy. And Maria Spanner. No? Samara Balfour. Good stand-up. Gina Crenshaw. So Yoko's not here. And Jeff Mills. What's that? Annie Stark. Annie? What happened to you, Michael? Where are you on the list here? You should be in this league. Maurice. Right here. Jason Preston, Ray Kingston. Mr. Weaver. I don't know why you didn't. You should have come up a long time ago. Yeah? You like sitting? Stand up. Who else is hiding back here? Oh. So does that mean that the others are all, you've only been here 2 or 3 times? I guess so. All right. So, and thank you for hanging out here for this whole time, for all of you who made it through this nearly 3 years. Thank you for being here. Now you can clap. All right. All right. Pardon? Jesus. Well, the Holy Spirit is always present, right? Yeah.
Put him at the top of the list.
Michael, I don't know why you're here somewhere. I don't know.
Well, he missed the first year, I think.
Well, that's still should have come out here somewhere. I don't know. Oh well. All right, let's start into 31. Oh, by the way, today I guess we're going to do it a little bit differently today, and seeing how this is the last of the chapters, we're going to stop at 4 and for about an hour or so, have a little party. And we do have refreshments, etc. Appreciate your help put chairs up or put some tables up, put some music on, and just spend some time getting to know each other a little bit better. Okay.
Michael's going to be doing some belly dancing.
Is he?
Oh, wow.
Well, that's an unexpected treat. All right, let's start going through this. Let me talk just a little bit about chapter 31 first. In some ways, chapter 31 is a summary of everything that we have found in terms of the course. It's also got some of the harder punching lines in it. By harder punching lines, I mean it's kind of says, okay, now I hope you're taking this seriously, and you really need to take this seriously. It really requires significant commitment to doing this. You got to kind of go all the way with it if you want to have success with it. You can be part of the way there. We're all part of the way there. But at some point, this is, once in a while I'll say to somebody, you know where this is going, don't you? It's going all the way home. I mean, we're completing the atonement. So we're getting completely out of the illusion. So that's kind of a scary thing in and of itself, because the fear is that if I complete the atonement, then I won't be me anymore, and that's true.
It's a good thing.
And it's a good thing, because who wants to live within the context of anxiety and illusion and fear and all these states which so often occupy our minds, which really don't have to, right? It's possible to go all the way. When Jesus did it, many of the great religious leaders have done it. I'm personally convinced, as you know, that Bill and Ken had completed the atonement, and Helen too, although she went kicking and screaming, but I think she did it all the way. We all kind of go kicking and screaming in a way, but it requires a lot of dedication. It says in that last section of the Manual for Teachers, it can perhaps be won after much devotion and dedication. So it's not something that we just dabble around in. And hopefully you just find it taking you deeper and deeper and deeper in terms of your being able to see differently, to see the whole world differently, and make a complete adjustment so that you just let go of all that insanity and all that neurosis and all that stuff that seemed to produce fear and anxiety inside of you. The Course should be really reassuring that that is just totally unnecessary. God really is in charge, and if you just pay attention to what He's asking you to do, you're going to be very happy as well. So let's go ahead and start into So this is from the earlier piece. Your power to learn is strong enough to teach you that your will is not your own. That's a very important line. Your will is not your own. In other words, it's not your little will that matters, right? Your thoughts do not belong to you, and ever you are someone else. Even you. Boy, that...
It says ever, but it should say even.
What?
It says ever, but it should say even.
It should say, I don't know how they got mistyped, because I usually copy and paste. All right, I want to jump up to this line here. And I'll come back to those other two. So the lessons you have taught yourself have been so overlearned and fixed, they rise like heavy curtains to obscure the simple and the obvious. Say not you cannot learn them, for the power to learn is strong enough to teach you that your will is not your own, your thoughts do not belong to you, and even you are someone else. So this is what we wanted to get to. So the Course talks a lot about learning in this chapter. And it's sort of interesting, I think, that there's so much talking about learning in the latter chapters. In some ways, it seems like maybe this should have been much earlier on. And what it says about this is really kind of interesting, because it says learning is something it's actually of this world and of the ego. There's no learning in heaven. The reason why there's no learning in heaven is, what is there? It's perfect. It's done. Now, what we have in heaven is we have knowledge. And actually the word heaven and knowledge are kind of synonyms in the Course in Miracles. It is an all-knowing state. Now let's be clear that we're not talking about knowledge in the factual collection of information sense. What we're talking about knowledge is what we're talking about being one with the mind of God, and that kind of all-knowingness. Everything is taken care of, everything is whole, and there's nothing to fear. Okay? So learning is something we taught ourselves. Now that's a very interesting line. So before time, before the Big Bang, before the tiny mad idea, there's no learning. In fact, it's what the tiny mad idea is, the thought that it is possible to think a thought outside of the mind of God. So it's not possible to think a thought outside of the mind of God. But somewhere along the way, it actually calls it an ancient thought. There's this really ancient, and we have, the lessons you have taught yourself have been so overlearned and fixed. So we bought, not just we, the whole world bought this idea of the ego and of the game and the play and power and politics and separation and segregation and difference and the whole idea that we could discriminate and segregate. It's an insane thought. But the insane thought is actually something that we have deepened. It's very ingrained. It's so deeply ingrained in us and in our parents and our parents' parents that what the Course is trying to get us to do, first of all, is to see how habituated we are, how deep this thought of the world is a terrible place and we're in a terrible fix within it, and that it needs to be fixed outside there. It needs to be fixed. The Course is very, very clear. There's nothing out there that needs to be fixed, right? The only thing that needs to be fixed is the way I see. Now, I know something really terrible happened last night, right? But even in terms of that, and it's not that people who don't do things like that don't need to be stopped. Certainly we have to stop that kind of thing, because we can't allow that kind of thing within the context of society. But still, the Course is very, 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 very clear that there's no one here in whom the light has gone out completely, and that somewhere or another the Spirit is speaking to everyone, no matter how dark it may be, how difficult it may be. You're actually very, very fortunate. We're all very, very fortunate in the sense of being in a position where we can learn something different, another way of seeing, that there's another possibility. A lot of people don't really know, that they don't have any idea that there's another way of seeing. They just think this is a really horrible, rotten world, and we're stuck in it, and that's it, and it's going to stay that way, and there's no way out. But there is an out. And then the Course of Miracles is telling us there's a way out. But it takes a lot of work. And the first thing we got to do, actually, is to stop the insanity that's in our own minds. Not the insanity that's in somebody else's mind, right? We have to be able to see that it's in my mind. That's why all the projection has to stop. All the judgment has to stop. All of it, right? And that's really hard to do, but what you can do is at least begin to become aware of how incredibly judgmental you are, and how incredibly projective you are, and how incredibly condemnatory you are about other people and parts of the world. And that's why I have the word fasting CD, is for the purpose of, it's just one really simple little technique, and it's a technique, but it's a technique that works, which is just paying attention to what the words that come out of our mouth, right? And think about, where does that come from, and why would we be projecting something like that, right? Why would we want to say, engage in name calling? It's interesting, we have a political situation, as we all know, going on right now. And there's a lot of name calling, sleazy, idiotic, stupid, ridiculous, absurd. You know, these kind of being bounded about each other. It wouldn't be a fun game to be part of, would it? Wouldn't be a fun game to really play, because then you get so immersed within the context of that game. And then you think the game is real. You think that you're right. The more you kind of put your position out there, the more you think it's right, and the more wrong you are. Right? Okay, so let me go back a couple now. So Helen once complained to Jesus that this course was too difficult, and Jesus said, "It's not difficult if you want to learn it." So this is about will again. You gotta wanna. You gotta wanna do this. You gotta want peace. That's one of the workbook was, above all else, I want to see. Very early, I think it's like number 5 in the workbook, right? And then the next one is, above all else, I want to see differently. I really want, you gotta really want to change it. And then you can change it, right? So, now going on. The simplicity of salvation. How simple is salvation? All it says is what was never true is not true now. And never will be. So what happens is that we've bought into thinking that something is true that's not true. That is the thinking that we're separate, that we have a right to judge, that we have a right to condemn, that we have a right to engage in this process of analysis, and that we're perfectly justified in all of our projections, which just makes us really unhappy. Can this be hard to know by anyone who wants it to be true? Only unwillingness to learn it could make such an easy lesson difficult. This is actually really easy. It's actually incredibly simple. I had a student from the course sent me an email this last week, and she's very involved in the course, has been for a long time, writes a few articles for Miracles Magazine, lives out in California. She says, "Yeah, I can't believe how easy this is." He says, "Why do people find this so difficult?" And I wrote back and I said, "Well, let's assume that you were, let's say, very overweight, and you're trying to lose weight. How easy is that?" You know, and she wrote, "But you use the simplest illustration," she said. You know, it's not easy. It's not an easy, you know, or to get rid of any kind of addiction, right? Smoking, for example, right? It's a really difficult, but it's easy. It's very difficult, it's very easy all at the same time. It just takes a thought, it just takes a decision, it just takes a willingness to do it. And then once the willingness to do it, let's say smoking. Let's say once the willingness to drop it is really there, and you do it, you feel a lot better having done it. It's a simple decision. It's not difficult at all, but you got to make the decision. Okay? How hard is it to see that what is false cannot be true, and what is true cannot be false? Why then do you persist in learning not such simple things? An untrained mind can accomplish nothing. So, let's go back to talking about learning again a little bit. So, the Course in Miracles says that the Holy Spirit can take anything which the ego has created and use it for a wholly different purpose. So, there's no learning in heaven. Learning is a part of what happens to it, and this is a course in miracles, so we have to learn the course. All right, so we are in the learning mode. These are lessons that we're trying to learn. So, but the problem is application. The Course says several times, and you're going to see it on one of the quotes here in a moment ago, it's really a very simple choice. There's a choice between, am I going to go with the ego or am I going to go with the Holy Spirit? It's that simple. And we know when we're being pulled in either direction. And we know when we make the choice to go one way or the other. Anna, can I use a simple illustration from you yesterday? We went to, we were having class here yesterday. We went out to lunch, okay? And I noticed, this is just a silly little simple illustration, but Anna will appreciate it. So we were getting over here at Pret a Manger, where you just take things off the shelf and eat them. And Anna, I noticed, reached over and she picked up a brownie, right? And then she put it back like that. and like, just that little temptation, you know, just that little thing. But there was in that, you could see this decision, and put it back. Don't go for it. Now, we all know about that, right? But how many ways do we know about that, and how many different ways, and how simple the choice is, really? It's just a simple little decision to make the right decision, and that's as simple as that. But in much more complicated instances than this, in relationships in particular, right? So that we don't see the relationship the wrong way, so that we don't feed the relationship the wrong way, so that we don't, you know, when you get to that point where you could very easily attack or just say something you think is kind of subtle without realizing the other person is going to take it as an attack, right? Just a little correction. We're just going to do a little correction here, right? But there's an ego in play, and the ego doesn't hear the little correction as a little correction. It hears it as an attack. So how often the real Course is just asking us to sit back, step back, don't go there. Actually, there's a line where it says, go the other way. This is what we talked before earlier about reversing thinking. The ego goes one way. The Course is asking you to reverse the thinking process. Go the other way. Take it completely in an opposite direction from the direction that the impulse, the impulse, all right? I won't go with there, all right? And the Course does say that a lot about actually in terms of the body. And I said, you know, the body, appetites are not of the body. That includes all kinds of appetites, right? They're not of the body, they're of the mind. The mind makes a decision. Sometimes we blame it on the body. We like to blame it on the body but the body's nothing. The body has no part in this at all, except insofar as the mind chooses. An analogy that Ken Wapnick liked to use a lot was the analogy of a puppet. All right? It's not, so if you're, and I have a chapter in an earlier book called Who Pulls the Puppet Strings, right? It's not the puppet, it's not the body. And in terms of its action, if you're upset with a puppet, it's on that's playing a role. It's the person who's pulling the strings that we really need to look at, not the puppet. All right? This one we did. What has been given you? The knowledge, now this is very important. The knowledge that you are a mind, in mind and purely mind, sinless forever, wholly unafraid, because you were created out of love. Let that sink in a second. This is the truth of who you are, right? Nor have you left your source, remaining as you were created. This is the deep metaphysics of the Course, isn't it? We never, ever left home. In fact, you never, ever left God. That's the truth. And only this is true, right? So this is why this is a dream. It's a dream world because it certainly looks like we did leave. And this all looks very real, right? But it's not, and the way that we know that a dream is not true is by awakening. So if I awaken, then I look back and say, oh, that was just a dream, right? The idea is to awaken now, right? I think one of the things that's going to happen to all of us when we pass out of this life is we're going to be given a little opportunity here to recognize that that was a dream. It's not to condemn it, it's not to demean it, it's to say that that wasn't what's really real, okay? This was given you as knowledge which you cannot lose. Now, that's a very important point too. Everyone has this knowledge in them already. Everyone already knows this. So this what we're trying to get back to, remembering what we already know. It was given as well to every living thing. So for that very reason, don't think that you know something that somebody else doesn't. That you're ahead of somebody else, spiritually speaking. That's a real trap. If you think that you're spiritually more advanced than somebody else is. The truth is you're right up there together. You may be a little happier because you understand things on a deeper level and they're coming along. But as far as God's concerned, we're all exactly the same. Right? It was given as well to every living thing, for by that knowledge only does it live. Go on. This course is practical, pleading with us to realize, one, you have a mind. Now that's pretty obvious, right? But the mind is very powerful. There's several points in the Course where it says, you have no idea how incredibly powerful your mind is. In fact, you have no idea how much effect that you're having on everything around you just by the nature of your thoughts. And if the thoughts can get into the right kind of alignment, you can create a pretty happy world around you. By that I mean at the family, at work, wherever the circumstances are. If you're not attacking, if you're not blaming, if you're not going after their ego, right, letting things be what they are, it's going to work out pretty well. You have a mind, that mind is very powerful, and that mind can change. That's the whole crux of this thing. What's the title of this last chapter? Okay. Choose once again, right? Right? So it's choose and make the final choice. Decide to go all the way this. Or I like this. This is Meister Eckhart. Christian mystic was my favorite quotes from Meister Eckhart. He said, you should become, this is why this requires dedication and commitment. Become in all things a God seeker, in all things a God finder, at all times and in all places. So we're not here just to get lost in a fantasy or to see how much pleasure we can attain for ourselves. There's nothing wrong with pleasure, but that's not what, if that's all there is, then let's keep dancing, right? We're really here to wake up and to come home, and this is the way we do it. It requires devotion, dedication. I've said that before. Okay. You have continued taking every step, however difficult, without complaint, until a world was built that suited you. And every lesson that makes up the world arises from the first accomplishment of learning, an enormity so great, the Holy Spirit's voice seems small and still before its magnitude. Now what that's talking about is the creation of the world. or the creation of the way we see the world, the creation of the insanity of the world that we seem to be part of right now, all right? And it all seems very real, and we bought it, and we buy into it every time we bitch and complain and nag and find fault with it. We're just adding to the insanity of the world, right? The lesson to be learned are only two. That's very simple. We already said this because there's only two possible guides, right? Each has its outcome in a different world, and each world follows surely from its source. So the ego creates an outside world, the world that we see on the news at night, right? The certain outcome of the lesson that God's Son is guilty is the world you see. Now this is very, very, very important in terms of understanding the Course. The ego thinks that everybody else, but certain people in particular, are really guilty. They're bad. They are the bad people. They are the ones that are screwed up. They're part of an ethnic group, for example, right? As some people would have us believe, like that could possibly be true, right? It's not true at all. The certain outcome of the lesson that God's Son is guilty is the world you see. Just think about that for a moment. How much do we see the problem is out there? It's not out there. It is a world of terror and despair. That would seem to be true in terms of the last 24 hours, right? Nor is there hope of happiness in it. Be innocent of judgment, unaware of any thoughts of evil or of good that ever crossed your mind of anyone. Now this is interesting that it says of evil or of good. Now the reason it says of evil or of good is because if you think good, then you must be implying that there's a bad. Right? There's an opposite. Then you're thinking there's something that's opposite to good, which would be bad. And there's no opposite. Heaven is one. There's one mind. It's a pure mind. It's a complete mind, and it doesn't submit to good or bad, either one, or pretty or ugly. None of that sort of stuff applies. And we're going. Now this is also, few appreciate the real power of the mind. This is an incredible thing we all have. And it's very simple for us to use it. It's just a matter of using it correctly. Few appreciate the real power of the mind, and no one remains fully aware of it all the time. No one remains fully aware all the time. However, if you are hoped to spare yourself from fear, and there are some things you must realize and realize fully, the mind is very powerful. We were emphasizing this a moment ago. And never loses its creative force. It never sleeps. Even when you're sleeping, the mind is still working. Some of the times in dreams, but even beyond that, it's still working, right? Every instant is it creating. The answer that I give my brother is that what I am asking for and what I learn of him is what I learn about myself. Now this again is also very, so the Course is trying to help us to understand the way we think about others is also the way we think about ourselves. And the problems that we find in the world, this is really important, are really the problems that are inside us. Because we are the labelers. We are the labelers of the problems, which means we are the seers of the problem. We are the identifiers of the problem. I said in here, in the little book that I mentioned, Wysiwyg. You know Wysiwyg? What you see is what you get, right? I used to have a graphic arts business back in the 80s, and we ran computers, and it didn't have Wysiwyg. We would have to put codes in for the way the type size was going to be and the size and all that. We had to print it out before we could see what it is that we had, right? But what we see is what we get. So it's all about seeing. What do you see? You condemning the world? You blessing the world? You're simply just loving the world. By loving it, again, by just letting it be. By letting it be, all I mean is just not judging it. So it's that simple. It's that simple. Then let us wait an instant and be still, forgetting everything we thought we heard, remembering how much we do not know, because He is your equal in God's love. You will be saved from all appearances and answer to the Christ who calls to you. Let's go back up to, then let us wait an instant and be still, forgetting everything we thought we heard, remembering how much we do not know. One of the things that I want to do this coming fall is I want to spend some time comparing the ideas of some different mystics with the teachings of the Course in Miracles. And I think it's a lot of fun to see how the ideas that are in the Course are not new. What's new about the Course is the way it's all put together, and the sophistication with which it's put together, and the fact that it's really a document of the 20th and the 21st, and the psychological sophistication of it. So it's, again, as I've said before, it's not surprising that it came through a psychologist who understood a great deal about the workings of this mind of ours. All right? So we're learning how to see things in a wholly different way, and we're learning to recognize, again, as I said, that what's the problem, my brothers, in me. What we have to get to really, really see, in terms of the mystics, is you have to get to a complete stop. To stop thinking. See, in order to reverse the process, so here's the ego is making up the world, right? Making up the world, judging and analyzing and interpreting and saying good and bad and nice and pretty and ugly and all the stuff that says about the world is see, and we spend a lot of time doing that. Just become aware of how much we do that. That's, if you can just stop that, that's going a long ways. Just stop that, right? But what you got to get to stop first. You can't return. You can't put it in reverse. You can't begin to go the other way until you stop and you see your own insanity. I want to share with you. If you got, I don't think I have this on a slide. We may have this on a slide later on, but let's go do it now. The back. Have you got the booklet? Okay, let's take the booklet and let's look at the very, very back. So, how did Jesus wake up? How did a Buddha wake up? Jesus has his 40 days and 40 nights in the desert before there's even one word of teaching. So they can kind of go off and took a deep look into this insane mind, realized that it was an insane mind and there was a wholly different way to see things. Buddha spends 7 years under the Bodhi tree before he, literally, one of the purposes of meditation is just to get us to stop, really stop. On the back here, I have a little something from a mystic from the early part of the, well, he was a 20th century. He died in 2007, which is, no, he had a very long life, actually. His name was Douglas Harding. He was in England, and he wrote a very nice book called something about having no head. He was also very much into Zen Buddhism. Zen, there's tremendous similarities between Zen and the Course. Insofar as both of them are really asking us to be able to try to get to this place where you could just stop the mind altogether. What would it be like if we could just completely put it in neutral? See, in order to go from one way to the other way, first you've got to go to neutral. Right? We can't put it in reverse. We can't take it out of gear, put it in another gear until we go to, the Course is asking to learn to go a different way. Take this a different way. So he had an experience in 1961, and this is his little description of his experience. I'll read this for you. It says, what actually happened was something absurdly simple and unspectacular. I stopped thinking. A peculiar quiet, an odd kind of alert limpness or numbness came over me. Reason and imagination and all mental chatter died down. For once, words really failed me. Past and future dropped away. I forgot who and what I was. My name, manhood, animalhood, all that could be called mine. It was as if I had been born that instant brand new, mindless, innocent of all memories. There existed now that present moment, and what was clearly given in it, to look was enough. And what I found was khaki trouser legs terminating downward into a pair of brown shoes, khaki sleeves terminating sideways into a pair of pink hands, and a khaki shirt front terminating upward in absolutely nothing whatsoever. Certainly not a head. Right? This is the point. We got to go. You can't reverse the process until we get it into stop. So the Course is really encouraged, to stop. Notice how often in the Course, for example, it will use the phrase, now be still. Or Lesson 189. Maybe I'll read part of Lesson 189 when we come back from our break. Turn to the inside of the booklet as well. On the very, very first page, on the inside of the cover, these are just a few quotes selected from different places. This is from a Zen Buddhist to start. Seeing into nothingness, this is the true seeing, the eternal seeing. What would it be like if we could stop thinking? Stop the good, stop the bad. Just be present and see. Or how about a Sufi mystic, Attar? Cover your breast with nothingness and draw over your head the robe of non-existence. It's totally got to get down to non-existence. The problem is that we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the second session. The Course talks about the difference between self and self-concept. So we have created a self-concept, a concept of who we are, which is not reality. There is a self that you are. That self is guaranteed. Just a second. Okay, go ahead. Yes, David. Oh, we need a mic, though. I'm sorry. A mic over here for David. Terrence has got one for you here. Okay.
It just, what you're saying just brings to mind, I forget who it was, some mystic or holy man. God can only visit if you are not there.
Right, exactly. It was Angelus Silesius, 17th century. He was a physician. He said, God, whose love is everywhere, can't come to visit unless you're not there, right? By not there, meaning not there in your head, right? God can't break through, God can't get in if you've got a lot of chatter going on. It's like you've got an interference pattern set up. And if you've got an interference pattern set up, then that interference pattern is literally interfering. It's keeping you from being a receptor. You can't be a receptor and a projector at the same time. That's another way to say it. So, I've said before, we'll say many times again, I'm sure, the basic difference between a mystic and an ordinary person is that the ordinary individual is a projector. So that means that we're making up the world. We're constantly making it up. What you see is what you get. We're constantly constantly analyzing, and constantly, isn't that awful kind of stuff, right? All right, second. And the alternative is that by emptying the mind, you don't have any projection going on. Or yes, Anna, no, you got to get the mic, honey.
Another way of saying that it comes to me is love comes on welcome, not on time.
Right.
Right? It's
Yeah,
the same way.
From the Course, right. Right. Let's just do a couple of more of these, and then about 5 minutes, we'll take our break. This is also Masufi Mystic. Behead yourself. Dissolve your whole body into vision. Dissolve your whole body into vision. Become seeing, seeing, seeing. See, that's what happens with the mystic, is the mystic sees. They just see. But they see without interpretation. They see without analysis. So if I'm seeing, but I'm not interpreting, I'm not doing good and bad on top of what I'm seeing, then I have a kind of pure seeing. And when you can get to that point, everything is fine, by the way. Everything is okay, just the way it is, without our analysis and our interpretation. And two more. Kabir. Give yourself utterly. Even though the head itself must be given, why should you weep over it? You know? Now what does it mean by the head here is even though the idea of yourself, even though the idea of yourself must be given. And then Teresa of Avila. My soul has been carried away, and usually my head as well, without my being able to prevent it. So she had some very deep meditative, mystical experiences in which she would just get, it would all disappear. That's what I mean by disappearing. It all disappears. The world disappears. And then you're just left there seeing. Now the challenge is being able to now hold that or to sustain that, which is very difficult to do admittedly, but the very fact that we can have this experience, this is a kind of, another way to talk about this in terms of the Course would be a holy instinct, right? Where, in other words, that there's no interference on the part of the ego. So if there's no interference, then there can be just kind of this pure, there's no worry, because there's no time. Worry is always about the future, right? What if? But if you don't have a what if, if you don't have a future to worry about, right, then there's no problem. Or there's no guilt. Guilt is only something you could have in relationship to the past. Something that happened that you feel bad about. But it's not here now, and it's not a part of your thinking now, so it's gone. All right? Let's just do two more of these, and then we'll take a. Let's see. Did I do the bottom part of this? No, let's do the bottom. And then let us wait an instant and be still, forgetting everything we thought we heard, remembering how much we do not know, because He is your equal in God's love. You will be saved from all appearances and answer to the Christ who calls to you. It's interesting, be saved from all appearances. Right? Be still and listen. Think not ancient thoughts. So again, the ancient thoughts, let's be clear about what the ancient thought. The ancient thoughts are all these thoughts that have literally been bred into us, and we bought them, about the world, about from our parents and from society as a whole, right? But the ancient thought is it's so ancient it goes all the way back to the beginning, back to the first thought of separation. That's how ancient the ancient thought is, right? Be still and listen. Think not ancient thoughts. Think not projective thoughts would be another way to think of, to say that, right? Be very still an instant. Come without all thought of what you ever learned before. We're really, this is wiping the slate clean. Blank slate. And put aside all images you made. And we make a lot of, these are the judgments again that we're making, that we throw out. The old will fall away before the new without your opposition or intent. I like the way Buckminster Fuller said, you don't overcome the old by resisting it. You overcome the old by making it obsolete through superior methodology. Now, he was an engineer, and he was like, but dude, you don't overcome let's say the church, right? And all the problems that are going on within the dogmas and the creeds and the laws and et cetera of the church has become literally old-fashioned. Nobody wants to think that way because we don't want to get put into a box, right? So the idea is not to resist or to fight against the church. We're not doing a revolution or a revolt against it. We're just finding a better way to think outside of what was. Be very still an instant, come without all your thoughts of what you've ever learned before, and put aside all images you made. The old will fall away before the new, without your opposition or intent, it'll just fall away. Forgive your brothers all appearances that are but ancient lessons you have taught yourself about the sinfulness in you. And again, that's the sinfulness that's in you because only from a position of sinfulness, of seeing sinfulness inside, could I see it in the world. One more and we'll stop. Actually, this is a good place to stop. We're at a change in mode a little bit. Last word from Anna before we take our minute break.
I just want to say to what you said before about not resisting, which is this the saying that I love very much so in a language of the heart. Love is love all that arises, as well inside of you as well as outside of you, to accepting and allowing world to be the way it is, and to accept and allow yourself to be the way you are at every moment, rather than resisting, pushing or pulling. We're accepting, loving what arises.
Even when it's something difficult that seems to be facing us, or something that seems to be in opposition to us, right? Or something that might be fearful for us. It's not, I had a heart operation. I was just advising George a moment ago, just relax tomorrow. That's really just relax. You're going to be in really good hands. The doctors know what they're doing. Your job is to relax and let them take care of you. Got that? Let's take a 10-minute break.